Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sit Heads Meditation Club. My name is John. Sit Heads is a sitting and social group for people interested in deep meditation practice. Everything we do is free and donation-based. If you want to hang out with us, you can find us at sit-heads.com. We do not have one set teacher, but we do have visiting teachers join us as guests from time to time. And we are very fortunate to have this week's guest with us, Richard Shankman. So Richard Shankman is a wonderful meditation teacher. He's been meditating for 50 years. He has tons of intensive retreat experience. He spent years in a Hindu ashram practicing concentration style meditation, after which he transitioned to Buddhist practice and completed many silent retreats, some lasting as long as 11 months. Richard's teaching style integrates concentration, insight, mindfulness, and compassion into a unified approach that I think is quite distinctive and interesting. He is the author of the excellent book, The Art and Skill of Buddhist Meditation, and the book, which I have not read yet, but here is also excellent, The Experience of Samadhi. That book came very highly recommended to me by a dear friend. Richard is the guiding teacher of the Metta Dharma Foundation in Berkeley, California. He's also a co-founder of Mindful Schools, which teaches mindfulness and contemplative practice in schools. It's exactly what it sounds like. All right, so before we get started, Richard, is there anything that you'd like to say?
Well, I'm happy to be with you and with all of you, and I'm looking forward to hanging out and talking about, well, we'll see where the conversation goes. I didn't come planned with anything particular, or just that you have in mind for me to say?
Yeah, no. I just, if you wanted to say hi or anything like that.
Yeah,
no, so you don't need to have anything prepared. We try and make it as easy for our guests as possible.
Yeah.
Just bring the wisdom that you've accrued over decades, and I'll take care of the flow of the conversation. All right, so the way that we normally do this is, and the way we're going to do it tonight is, Richard and I will have a conversation for the next maybe 25 minutes, something like that. Not only is that super fun for me, but more importantly, it tends to seed the Q&A. So it'll hopefully, suggest to you participants different areas where you might want to ask Richard questions. And then at the end of my conversation with Richard, we'll open it up to the whole group and do a Q&A. And at that time, I'll talk about how to sort of submit your questions. So we'll do that. So Richard, shall we get this show on the road?
Yeah, let's talk.
All right. So I have a few things I want to talk with you about, but I think one good place to start is your approach to teaching meditation, at least based on your book, The Art and Skill of Buddhist Meditation, which I highly recommend for people of all skill levels or experience levels. But in that book, your approach is one that doesn't really draw a sharp distinction between concentration practice styles and insight practice styles. You don't really talk about do concentration meditation, then do insight or vipassana meditation. You teach a sort of unified style, which I know is in some senses in vogue. There's a lot of talk of sort of samatha-vipassana in some circles, but I really thought that yours was especially integrated. And I would love to hear a little bit more about that. And I'm going to sort of approach it in a slightly spicy way, which is I'm going to push back on one element of it and see what you think about this potential critique of that approach. So in the book, you say, and correct me if I'm sort of misrepresenting, you say that one piece of advice you give is when your concentration is strong and stable and the mind is settled and calm, double down on concentration. Do essentially really go into the samadhi, right? And sort of pursue that. And then when concentration is weaker and the mind doesn't settle or doesn't seem able to stabilize, use that as an opportunity for insight practice and explore the nature of things and pursue insight. Am I representing that more or less correctly? I'm sure it's a bit reductive.
I would tend to I would tend to say it a little differently than that, but I think that's reasonable. But actually just listening to you, so, I'm going to follow your lead. I don't want to take over and try to steer this in any way, but follow you in the group. But I am kind of, if it's all right with you, just very brief, I can do it quick. I'd like to kind of step back. I'm realizing I do have a little something I'd like to just offer, if that's okay with you.
It's more than
Because
okay.
you're starting to talk about techniques of meditation practice, and we can spend the whole time. I'm into it, but I think there's something more foundational than that I just would like to just throw out there. And well, first of all, I have to say, I've met you, you and I hung out, we had a great conversation. I really enjoyed it a lot. We spent some time. So I've gotten to know you a little bit, but, I don't know your group or anything. But I don't assume that everybody in this group or in general meditators are all even have the same aims or goals. And so what we do, the practices we do and the qualities we're cultivating, we may not all have the same thing we're trying to get out of the practice. Now, I am guessing that just by the virtue of the fact that people showed up for a group like this, that probably we all share certain things in common. Like, I'm guessing that probably if you went around and asked, everyone here would probably maybe want to live in a way that's, well, I don't know, less reactive and more wisely responsive in life, more loving and kind and empathetic and less grouchy, right? More clear, less diluted. I mean, we could go on and on with all of these adjectives. Or maybe you could say it in a simple way, like, I'll bet you, if we were to ask, probably all of us would want to live in a way that creates less and less suffering in the world for ourselves and for others, and wants to create more happiness and well-being, also for others and ourselves too, right? I'm just assuming that's true. And if not, someone can take the, but it's not for me or any of us to say what someone's goals should be. But so you don't have to get it very clear. You may have a general sense of what you're drawn to try and do. Although if we reflect on these things, it's helpful. The reason I bring this in is that then we can step back and say, what are my aspirations or my goals? And then what are the qualities I want to develop in myself to support so that I actualize that in my life more? So it goes from being a nice idea to actually more a state of my being more. And then the question comes in, if I get a sense of what are the qualities that are going to help me, then it's like, what are the techniques and practices? Concentration, insight, mindfulness. That's getting into methods and techniques. So I just wanted to throw that out there because as we get into the nuts and bolts, which I suspect we're going to, what we're interested in may be different. So having said that, yes, what I have found for myself and most people, the qualities that I think support deepening in whatever you choose as your way, but I threw out a few things, is we want to learn to steady the mind, that's the concentration. And we want to have the mindfulness, the insight, the perceptions, and the understandings of things. We want to develop the qualities of the heart. All of these qualities have to come in together. And in fact, if you thought you were just going to do one or the other of these qualities, you can't do it. If you think, oh, I'm going to develop concentration, we'll get into it, but insight, mindfulness, love, they're going to all come in too. So the way I practice is, yes, we find some technique, it doesn't matter what the technique is, that is optimized for each individual person. So one size does not fit all. And we just stay with that to kind of develop the concentration. And you don't have to think of anything else, you just go for it. On its own, you're going to have times when you can't concentrate or you're suffering. Guess what? You're on the insight side of the practice. And so we have to have the tools and techniques then to know how to use those times skillfully. And then there's the times when it'll settle out. You're naturally back on the concentration side. And so you don't have to choose. You just let the present moment. I guess I did go on longer than I said I would, but kind of let the present moment inform what's needed in our meditation practice, not come at it with our agenda. Well, we can have our agenda, but I mean, we have to stay open to then what is served up to us, is what I mean.
Well, now I don't want to ask my fiddly little technical question.
No, ask your question. It's all good. No, but
now.
The technical stuff's good.
No. But let me say, in seriousness, I really do appreciate the broader context that you brought to that, because it is easy. You know, one thing I appreciate about this group is that we can get. I'm happy we don't get too fiddly, you know, but I do appreciate that we talk about technique and we take seriously meditation as a craft. And I really appreciate that you do too. I mean, you call it the art and skill of meditation. And so I appreciate that. Yeah. But it is also possible to, get too myopically focused on questions of technique and forget the broader holistic attitudes that we should bring to bear and also our aspirations. So I appreciate that recentering.
Yeah. But the techniques, I mean, that's what we're doing. When we sit to meditate, we're doing some practice, method, system technique. So we do want to get in there. The thing we just want to keep in mind is that no matter what I or any other teacher says, it will be a fit for some people. For other people, it won't be a good fit. And the important thing is like what works. That's kind of where I'm maybe a little different than some teachers, is I don't have a set. I know where I'd like us to get, but what I want to find out is what's going to get each person there better. So for example, mindfulness of breathing, which has been my practice for more than 50 years now, but that might not be your best practice. Maybe you need to do mantra or Sufi dancing. I don't know what it is. You know, we have to find your doorway to get into these deeper states, but we want to try to get to these deeper states because it's pretty amazing what is possible.
Yeah.
But the pathway is not the same for everyone.
No, I really appreciated that about the book, that, you know, it's a book, so you can't tailor it to the particular reader. It's not possible to do that, right? To some extent, you have to present a system that addresses a broad cross-section to the best of your ability. But I appreciated that even within that, you offered a variety of meditation objects from the jump, even within the context of breath practice, a number of different ways to engage in breath practice based on a person's inclinations or dispositions. So I appreciated I think, very successful effort to allow for diversity of tendencies, even in the reader of your book. So I really appreciated that.
Yeah. When I was the newest to practice and knew the least, I was the most opinionated. I couldn't say it out loud because then you sound like a jerk. But I had to inside. I really had strong opinions about this is what's right, and I'd be externally polite to other people's practices. And then over time and over the years, not only as a practitioner, but if any of you are or get in the teaching role, one of the gifts is you really see we have a lot of commonality, but we're so different in so many ways. We're somatically wired up differently, our history, our psychology, again, our aspirations. And so that you really come to not just as sort of a nice thing to say, but we really are so diverse. So naturally, that's the trick, is finding that first doorway so you can kind of get it to catch. And once that happens, then the way starts to open. But sometimes it takes some experimenting to figure out what's your optimum kind of practice technique.
Yeah. On that same topic, or on I would say an adjacent topic, this idea of it's not exactly the same topic, but not drawing such bright lines between concentration practice, insight practice, but rather giving someone a vehicle that they can take in different directions depending on what catches for them, as you said. I really thought it was interesting. You know, one thing that struck me was that in your book, The Art and Skill of Buddhist Meditation, when you give a few options of meditation objects that folks can use, you gave breath meditation, you gave mantra practice, you gave the touch points, you gave, I'm not necessarily gonna be able to remember them all, but you also gave the body scan. And I thought this was interesting because this really highlights what makes your approach different, I think, in some ways, or somewhat more unique. Because, you know, for instance, if you were going to do vipassana in the tradition of, you know, the Burmese master U Ba Khin or his famous student, S.N. Goenka, those are considered very different practices, right? The practice of breath is considered a concentration practice. It is characterized as preparatory for the insight practice, which is embodied by the body scan. And the body scan
That's
is
one
view.
Practice. That's one view among many views, which is a fine view. It's great. If that's the path for you, that's great. But
this is what I want to tease out. Yeah. This is what I want to tease out. Is I want to hear your thoughts on that, because you place them right next to each other, side by side, as essentially you pick one of these, feel which one is groovy for you, and then we're gonna go along this path of meditation. And so that is very different. So can you compare and contrast those views and talk about perhaps why different schools or different approaches hold those different views?
Oh, the reason they hold different views is because some teacher went off and that's the practice that worked for them. Obviously, Goenka's practice worked great for Goenka. Pa Auk's worked great for Pa Auk. And I could go on and on about all these, so the main cast of characters of sort of, and the only mistake they made is they thought, oh, it is the best, the right, the true way. It was for them. Have they tried every other style of practice? No, they don't know. Listen, I'll tell you a story. I knew a guy. So there's a teacher named Pa Auk. This is Pa Auk Sayadaw. I interviewed him in my first book on Samadhi. He's got a real, very, very specific system, and he teaches this word jhana. I don't know if we'll get into that, but if you don't know what it is, don't worry, but there's a range of jhana systems out there. There's not one kind of jhana, and it's a big world. But he teaches a particular jhana system, and he teaches a very, very specific way that you attain it. He says the only way you can get his jhana is you have to do mindfulness of breathing. Forget it. You can't do anything else. Not only that, you have to pay attention to the breath at the nose. Even more than that, you actually have to put your attention just out into space. Just not even the physical nose. You're actually in space, maybe an inch out from the nose, not on the. If you don't do that, you're not going to get his jhana. Well, I know somebody who got the Pa Auk jhana, certified by Pa Auk himself. He just blew off Pa Auk's practice, didn't do it at all. He started to do Pa Auk's practice with the breath, and then he started to get this blue light that he started to feel right here at this third eye area. And it was very compelling, so he just went with that. And it took him into the jhana. Now, he didn't tell Pa Auk that. And Pa Auk authorized him that he got through, actually went through his entire system of jhana and insight. There's a living example that even a great master like Pa Auk, and when you meet Pa Auk, he's one of these people where it's like, I don't want to do his practice, but whatever he's got, that's what I want. It's palpable. He's just an amazing being. But he's just completely wrong about, it's just an ignorance about it. I wouldn't say that to him, but in a polite way, I would say, actually, I've had this conversation before. He just laughed. But and I can give you a lot more examples just like that. So the mistake, and I think hopefully we're learning, maybe it's a new culture. I don't know. I want to be careful in what I'm saying because I don't want to speak about other cultures from outside of them. But yeah, I don't know what it is. Tradition, it's a certain way. hopefully we come to really understand that no matter what of these different schools you go to, in all of them, I know people personally for whom they worked great, and I knew people for whom they were a meltdown. And then the question is, if you find something you don't think is working, do you just surrender into it and just keep pushing through that? Because you might be following your own likes and dislikes and your own delusion if you turn away. Or should you be listening to the part that says, no, this is not working for me?
You took my question right out of my mouth.
To something else. Well, so then we're kind of stuck, because all you can do is make your best choice. You can't do more than that. And so you listen to yourself the best you can. And look, there will be times when by listening to yourself, it was the wisest thing to do. When there'll be other times when you should have hung in there. Okay, big deal. So you didn't make the number one best choice. It's not the end of the world. Because what happens is we start to learn more and more about what we can trust in ourselves. This is a big deal about coming to know our own inner guidance and our own inner teacher. Not an ego thing like we know everything, but there's something we learn what we can really trust within ourselves. And you can tell the difference between your ego but just something profound inside that guides you through experience. And more we know what we can trust, and less are we led around by our greed, hatred, and delusion. So it works out over time. But we may make some mistakes, but what can you do but make the best choice you can? So sometimes we're going to hang in there and we're going to suffer when really we should have gotten out of there, And other times we'll leave and really we could have gained a lot if we had hung in there, but you can't know. So we need to be kind to ourselves, knowing that we're sincerely doing the best we can. And that is so key. You can't do better than the best you can. So let's just relax. Not make a big deal about it.
Yeah, well said. I mean, my question was going to be, given that you put so much emphasis on following your own intuition, how do we know, if you're pursuing given practice and it's not working for you, how do you know if it's just a hindrance of doubt to be ignored, pushed through? And I mean, your point is really well taken. You can't know. You cannot know, right? But it's okay. It's not the end of the world if you mess that up every now and then. And as you said, the more you do that, you will build the skill of intuiting correctly. And right. So that intuition will become more and more reliable. So that's a really helpful and mature answer. Whereas I was thinking of it in terms of, give me the answer for how I can make sure I do that right each time. But
I will tell you something, I'm not trying to be glib about it, but actually I like the way you say that about doing it right, because I mean it quite sincerely. Doing it right so for some of us, listening to ourselves is a hard thing, because our own psychology, and if that's whomever, maybe some of us here in this, statistically, what are there, maybe 20, 30 of us here? There'll be some people here right now for whom that happens to be one of the, we all have what I call our top 10 tunes, which is sort of trying to be a little humorous about our own psychological areas that can be challenging for us, right? So for some people, there's nothing wrong with us, but it's just really validating ourselves and trusting ourselves can be a big deal. So I want to be very respectful that I know it's not easy just to say, oh, trust yourself. That may be an area that needs some exploration. That's kind of the insight side of the work we might be doing. But everybody can kind of get there. We have to, maybe you get some help, some therapy, a Dharma teacher, whatever, but we can get a friend. But it's in the doing is making the right choice. Because even if we made I'll just say it as kind of, I'm not being that articulate, but let's just say we judge it as being a mistake. That's okay, because it's a feedback system. If we're open to the learning tools, what would you say, of the earth, then we take an action, and then we hold ourselves with kindness and compassion, knowing that we're doing the best we can, and sometimes we're going to mess it up. And hopefully we don't cause too much breakage along the way for ourselves or others. Yeah, for sure. And then we look to see, and if we screwed it up, rather than beating ourselves up, why can't we just say, well, I messed that one up, didn't I? I would have been better if I did. We learn. And we say, well, now I learned. That was my best choice. And now I learned. And then we move forward and we hold ourselves with, that's where the kindness and self-empathy comes in. So really, that's the answer on how to do it right, is make a choice and then look to see what happens. Let it teach us.
Yeah. And I think that's that attitude, I think, will also help avoid paralysis, right? Because like sort of choice paralysis, because you can hold your choices a bit more lightly, because it's not ultimate doom if you don't get it right this time. This is a repeat game, right? We make choices over and over again, and each time we have the opportunity to course correct and learn.
If we can do that, but I would just say, yes, I completely agree with that, but we should add in that may not get us past choice paralysis if that's our learning edge. See, I don't call them places where we're screwed up or where we're wounded. I don't like that. I like to think of them, it's just kind of a better way in my mind to think of it. I think of them as learning edges. We've all got them. Everybody's got them. And I like that image of learning edges. And if we're up against a learning edge, that by definition, well, what makes it a learning edge? So we may be stuck in paralysis. And then we may get past, or we may not. But if we're, it can be hard to not be afraid when we're afraid, right? So we, to me, one of the big pieces that helps me bring in more kindness for others is just looking at my own areas of challenges and things I've worked with. And, I don't know if I hung up there for a second, but I was sorry, I might repeat, but where it helps me bring in more kindness and empathy for others because of all the places where I need it for myself. Because, I've been doing this stuff for, you said 50 years, more than 50 years now. And I put a lot into it, and I'm not making any grand claims, but just like anything you do, I consider myself of average natural abilities, but I've put a lot in. I still, to this day, meditate as much as ever. And I don't know what would happen if I stopped. I haven't done the experiment, so I don't know. But so I feel very, very happy with the fruits of what can come alive for anyone. But at the same time, we're all human beings, and I still see, after parts of your psychology that's still hanging on, or the places I can get reactive, or places where ill will can come up in my mind. And you got to hold yourself right with a lot of kindness there. And so it's not a question that those won't come up, but the question is, what do I do with them when they do come up? And that's the learning opportunity. But I don't know if it ever comes to an end. So then it goes back to, that's why I make a big deal about, you may not want to steer it back to meditation techniques. We're getting into more general Dharma, but concentration, I think, is a huge big deal because it's support. Oh, I should also add in, I don't think it's a big of any great thing at all at the same time. It's both. Because people will get stuck. We're going to talk about what a big deal it is, but I already know people who don't have any concentration are going to be judging that one, which is fine. You don't have to have any more than you have, but we want to aim towards having a more clear, steady mind long term.
Were you also going to talk about, you were right about to talk about why concentration is such a big deal?
Well, I would just say, so one of the things that happened is kind of interesting because of my first book, the Experience of Samadhi. I guess it's because of that I tended to attract a lot of people who had a lot of samadhi, and actually a lot of people came to me who were in the traditional insight or vipassana meditation world, who felt like there was kind of this thing about the concentration side that was, you couldn't talk about it, or you weren't supposed to, and they didn't feel like they had a place. We can talk about what that's all about. Some people will relate to that. Some won't know what I'm talking about. But it comes out of a certain understanding of concentration that I think is a mistaken view, but that's a whole different thing. But everyone I know who's had the samadhi deepen, the concentration, I just mean the mind just becomes less distracted. Because, nobody, no matter what we say about samadhi, how important, nobody says be distracted. No teachers say that. Everybody would think it can serve us to have a less distracted mind. That's all we're talking about. That's, I think, just obvious that's of benefit. Just like to be more mindful rather than being lost and caught in things, and to have more clear perceptions and insights, and have a heart that closes off to others less and stays open more. All of these things are obviously to our benefit. So why don't we do things that help deepen and strengthen them, and then see for ourselves what good did that do us or not? Not what someone tells us, but we look to see what's the effect in our lives. And I think most people, everyone who sees these will. And the good news is, if I can just add this in, the way you get there is not trying to strive. It's just being here with whatever's here, including a mind that won't concentrate. That's fine. That's what's actually real and true. Or I can't sit still for more than 2 seconds, or I feel like I'm going to jump out of my skin. And what's all this deep meditation I keep hearing everybody talk about? When's that going to happen for me? And, I remember when I was first starting to meditate, I was in more of a Hindu yoga tradition. Everybody was sitting around like these statues. I was like in hell. I mean, because you had to sit with your knees, my knee pain and all my self-esteem was up around, and my despair and super self-critical, and I couldn't concentrate. And I just remembered thinking, look at them all. Everybody's blissed out but me. Of course, I didn't know. And I was judging, and what I really didn't realize over time that first of all, I didn't know what was true, and second of all, it's of no consequence. It's just what's real and true right now, and then what might be some ways I can work with this to help me. And then over time, as the concentration naturally grows. By the way, everybody, even though I don't know people here, one thing I know, everybody of the 28 of us here, every one of us can train our minds to concentrate. I've never met a single person who couldn't ever. Some people need to find the key or the right doorway because they've been rattling on the wrong door. That's all it is. John, I'm kind of, one of the things, you don't know me well enough, but you're starting to get to know, I do have a reputation as a prolific word generator. So you may have to, it can't be helped. So you're going to need to help me here a little bit as the moderator.
No, that's fine, Richard. First of all, I relate. Anyone who knows me knows that fond of my own voice. But let's.
I don't know if I'm fond of my own voice. It's just kind of the way my mind's wired.
Oh no! I'm not attributing that to you. I'm attributing that to myself. But yeah, talkers of the world unite. But let's open it up. I thought that was wonderful. I think we've given a lot of excellent raw material for Q&A. Yeah. So let's get into that if you're ready for that, Richard.
Yeah, I'm good.
Excellent. So yeah, thanks so much for sharing. I really do find your perspective super helpful and refreshing, and
good. Glad to hear that.
And your points and reassuring in a sense. Your points about how to think about doing it right and what that really means and doesn't mean is such a sort of welcoming perspective and a sort of self-compassionate perspective. And I can't see it doing anything but helping or benefiting. So I'm grateful for being exposed to that perspective. And I'll probably watch this again and review in particular that section of our discussion. So I want to thank you for that.
Yeah.
Let's do it. So, all right, having said all that, Stephen, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Hi, Richard. Thanks for spending some time with us tonight.
Yes.
When I read The Experience of Samadhi about 2 years into when I started meditating. One of the things that I'm grateful that it did is it kind of dynamited my whole idea of like what I was moving towards as far as the path and what enlightenment is. And I was happy for that because I was kind of getting stuck on a certain way of perceiving it. And shortly thereafter, I watched somebody, experienced meditator, lifelong meditator, storm out of a meditation group because we had a discussion about the book and about how definitions of enlightenment can vary dramatically. And I've seen teachers like snap on somebody laughing in a meditation retreat. And what it really has me thinking about, what I thought about on and off through the years, is trying to gauge like where we are in practice, because I feel like those teachers, I mean, their concentration was phenomenal, or their scholarly understanding of Buddhism and the path was far exceeded what I had seen before. But how do we really gauge our progress? I know that's a big question, but what are some things we can look at in our lives and in our experience to really help us get a good understanding of progress on the path, such that we don't end up with crazy good concentration, but we snap on somebody who laughs.
Yeah. Right. No, I totally hear, and I appreciate you saying that. Of course, I don't need to know who the teacher is and don't want to, but these kind of things can happen, right? Because we're all human, and so whatever it was triggered them off, and so it can happen. I guess a couple of things come up. I think that's a huge question you're bringing up, or comment. So I'll just maybe say a couple of things, but maybe I'm only going to just be able to touch on it because that's actually big. I would say gauging progress, so there's sort of you said something on the path to enlightenment. I don't know if you use that phrase or something. So I want to be kind of careful because we have a lot of different, I don't know you, and people have different, first of all, we may not all be here thinking in these terms of enlightenment or whatever that means for us all. So we might all hold different conceptions about it. Even the great masters don't seem to agree. So we want to, but so having said that, we'll hold our own sense or view or ideas about that. I would say two things. One is when it comes to forget concentration, when it comes to meditative states, that's something we can really look at. And because the more we get to, I think that the landscape of consciousness and what's possible is vast. And in fact, for those of you, you don't have to know Buddhist texts or Pali language or anything, but some of you may be interested. There's this list that came from the Buddha. I'll come back to your thing in a second, called the 4 imponderables. And it's 4 things where the Buddha said, don't try to figure this out because 1, you just can't. And number 2, he didn't use this exact language, but he said it would just blow your mind. So just don't go there. And like, I'll just say what they are. It'll relate, you'll see in a second. One of them is like, what was the beginning of existence? How did it, the beginning of all things, like just don't even, the intricacies of karma was considered one. It's too vast. The mind of the Buddha was considered one, but the 4th one was the range of experiences possible in these specialized meditative states called jhana. That was one of the 4 imponderables. What that tells us is it's a vast universe out there, but so we're not going to know everything, but we can know a lot. And so either in your own experience, or you talk to someone else maybe who's got some experience. There's a number of teachers out there. I do this kind of stuff, and you get to know kind of a lot of sign points. And so if that's what you're looking for, then we can look and see what's going on, kind of where you're at, and what are some things that might help further along. So that's more specific about meditative states. Getting back to general progress as just human beings, if you will, or meditators or Dharma people, or whatever word you want to use, I'll just offer my own take on it, and you'll have to see if it may or may not be for you. And that is, I don't tend to think in terms of where I am on some scale of the path. But what I've gotten really interested in is, for me, my practice has gotten very simple. I still meditate a fair amount, but actually more than ever these days, formal. But the rest of the time, which is what I really feel the leading edge of my own practice, it's real simple. As I go about my business in the day, and my heart is either open or closed. I'm either caught in clinging and reactivity or I'm not. And when I'm flowing in the stream of non-clinging with an open, loving heart, I don't do anything. I just live. And when my heart closes off, though, I'm very interested in there of what it is to open the heart. When I get caught in reactivity or clinging, let go. And so I don't know where I am on the path, but I just can be right here with what's happening and use that. And that's, for me, it's a very simple thing. And then I found all the meditation helps me be more present and awake. So I'm lost and caught in things less. I'm not going to claim I never space out, but it's way better. And then you can do that. So I'm more interested in just what's actually real and happening now. And I appreciate the times when I'm kind of liberated in the moment. And I try my best to use the times when I'm not to show me where more work needs to be done. And I just keep it simple like that. So I that's what I have to offer. I don't know if that's useful or not, but
I think that's a solid answer. Kind of being really aware of the nature of the heart throughout the experience of the day. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Richard. Thanks, Stephen. So we have another question here, Richard, and it's one that that was sent to me, so I'm going to read it. And if other folks have questions, just keep sending them my way, or just let me know in the private chat that you have a question, or send me the question if you want me to read it. Let's see. Richard mentioned that everyone can learn to concentrate. I have so much restless energy. I meditate twice daily, but often feel like I'm going through the motions. What's the best way to find my way to learn to concentrate?
Right. So that can be answered, but since I don't know whomever it was that answered that, I would actually have, if you want to talk to me about it, or anyone, what I would do is I would actually talk with you. We'd have if you're around, we'd meet in person, or we'd do a Zoom thing or a phone call. And I would need to ask you some specific questions, like, well, what practice? This is what I would do. I would say, well, what do you do when you sit down to meditate? You do some technique. Tell me what you do. Tell me what happens. And I would start to drill in. And then based on that, I would offer what I call some experiments, because pretty much I guarantee just from that little question, I've heard that a million times. And I've been there myself. So first, for whomever asked that, don't take it too personal. Well, I mean, it is personal, it's you, but we've all been in that boat. I don't know the answer for you. I'd have to talk with you, but I will know that we would offer something that I would think based on what you said, and you would go try it. You would come back and tell me what happened. And based on that, that would fine tune, and everybody gets there, but we'd have to go through some experimental steps, perhaps, to get there. I'm sorry I can't, because I just don't know. But can I just say one other thing, John? A couple of people have texted me directly here. I'll just make it quick here. Like, they want to know how they could contact me if they wanted to. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to send in the chat here, if you feel like you want to contact me, you're welcome to. And I'll do the best I can, depending on my schedule, but it's fine to do that. If you want to chat or talk, that's totally fine.
That's great. And I was going to ask, are you working with individuals, or in what capacity can
yes, I do.
Work with you?
So, yes, I actually. Oh, yeah. So let me be really clear. I'm not fishing for students or anything. I've got plenty going on, but but people do come, and I try my best. If people, this is what you'll find too. If you go on meditation retreats, some teachers don't work with people outside the retreat context. I actually don't teach as many retreats these days, and I'm more kind of interested in sort of working one-on-one with people. So I do that a fair amount, actually. And what happens is some people do it on a regular basis. I meet with them every week. Some people talk to me once every 6 months when they want. So it's just highly individual. So let me just make sure I didn't put a typo. Metta Dharma. There.
All right, there it is in the chat. And I'll just say, I think one question that gets asked in the Sitheads group sometimes is, I'd like to find a teacher. I'd like to have an actual student-teacher relationship. How do I do that? And it's a hard question to answer because teachers who work, reputable teachers with lots of experience, who work individually with people, that's hard to find. That's hard to find, And so when a teacher like yourself says, oh, I actually do work with people one-on-one, just get ready for some emails is all I'll say.
Yeah. So let me just tell you, and look, but here's what happens. If you find anyone out there, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be a golf teacher. If you want to work on your golf swing, you go to that teacher and you put it out and you say, do you work with whatever? They'll tell you. And if they're not available, they'll let you know, and that's fine. And like for me, depending on my schedule, I do the best I can. Sometimes my schedule's more full, sometimes not. So you just put it out to everyone, and don't ever be shy, because and just, you'll find people out there you relate to. By the way, I want people to be able to do their questions. Here's my request. A couple of people which was fine, sent in the chat, their contact information. But would you please, this will just work so much better for me. If you want to connect with me, email to metta@mettadharma.org, or you can go on the Metta Dharma you can go on the website there too, that if you forget, that's our organization in Berkeley, Metta Dharma. Or you can just Google my name and you'll get there, and just email to me rather than doing it here through the chat. And then you'll just have a way better chance of getting a response just because of the way I work.
All right, shall we go on to the next question?
Go. Yeah, it's up to you.
Excellent. Sean, the editor of our videos too, by the way, very grateful to Sean for the work that he does there as a volunteer. Sean, do you want to ask your question?
Sure. Hi, so yeah, I was curious about like what your views were on compassion practices, and like how that relates to like insight and concentration. Like, is that something where you generally think of it as like some people just like, you should do a lot of like metta practices or something like that, or is it just kind of something that naturally like arises from just like insight?
Yeah. So that's a big question also. And again, it just depends on each person's so there's two different things. One is, no matter what practice we choose to, there's compassion or metta or any of these qualities as a state of being, and then they're also as practices that you can do to cultivate them. So there's sort of the two different things. For some people, those qualities of the heart, I'll just summarize them as qualities of the heart, naturally arise more without formally doing those kind of practices. That's kind of more my way, how it's been. I've never personally been that big on formal practices. I found that it just kind of cracks open sometimes on its own, but I've done those practices too. But for me, everything came out of mindfulness of breathing. That's just my own personal style. The metta, the insight, the concentration, everything. For other people, they may want to devote specific part of their practice or all of it on some or one or more of the many practices that are out there and approaches. Lots of different ways it's done. We maybe don't have time to get into it now, but I could get in because there's a lot of ways that some people repeat these phrases. That's mantra practice. Some people, it's more of a radiating feeling. There's a big range of it. So I would just say again, it's not one way. And but what I would say is, I don't, since I don't know you, maybe you already know what I'm about to say, but everyone will discover that whatever practices you do, when we find the right doorway and we apply ourselves, it opens up into everything. And they're not concentration, insight, mindfulness, and we call them the heart practice. I just like to say love, because I just like the word love. I don't even like loving kindness. It's a great word. It's a little weaker to me. It's like love, but that's just my own thing. You know, maybe I'm splitting hairs. All of those are different, but you can't separate them out because they all kind of lead. This is what I mean. They're not the same things, but if you settle your mind, for many people, the heart will open, or it will be obvious you need to do practices, or the mindfulness will come in, or the insights will come in. Or if you think you're just doing metta practice, you're gonna do something and you're gonna steady your mind more, and the concentration will come in. So these are all different doorways. That's a big topic. Yeah, which is the right one? So for you personally, you know, it's either you have to find your own way, or you talk to different people to kind of figure it out. And then you pick something and try it out and stick with it a little while. I don't know if that's a very good answer. It's the best I know to say.
Definitely. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks, Richard.
Yeah.
All right. Fred, want to ask your question?
Yeah, of course. Thank you. You hear about Buddhist temples and monasteries a lot, but you don't hear a lot about Hindu ones. So we're just curious about how's life in a Hindu ashram.
You know, so I don't know if I'm the best one to talk about it. What I would say is this was back in, you know, back out of the kind of late 60s, and people like Ram Dass were coming on the scene, and Allen Ginsberg, and there was sort of that Alan Watts and all that kind of crew was way back then. And it was connected with what was going on with the old counterculture and hippie scene and all that. So it was kind of in those flavors. A lot was coming out. The Buddhist stuff was around, but I think more the Hindu-oriented flavors were just around a lot. And so my experience, I didn't go to India, actually live with an Indian guru, but he was in this country in the ashram. And so I got a certain flavor. I don't know if I'm qualified to talk so much about it, because I was only immersed in that world for a few years. I started in 1970, and then by the mid 70s, I was kind of, there's a whole story there. I won't bore you with it, but I don't mind talking about it, but it's not that interesting, slid into the Buddhist world. So I could, if you have some specific things I could answer, but it was more kind of the be here now Ram Dass kind of world that was very Hindu oriented. So I just don't know if I'm very qualified to say much more in the broader. It was, you say the Hindu oriented, but it was really yoga is what we were talking about, but not just as hatha yoga and the physical, but it was as meditative practices. I don't know. Okay, good enough. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a perfect answer. Any answer would have done. So it's perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Fred, and thanks, Richard. We have a lull in questions right now, so folks should send me more. And in the meantime, I'm going to deploy my prerogative and give myself a question to ask you. Is that all right? Because I get to do that if I want to. Haha. So I want to come back to the fiddly technical question that I didn't ask before.
I've been waiting.
So here's the fiddly technical question. In the book, as I mentioned, again, with the caveat that you are not suggesting there's a one-size-fits-all approach to meditation. and that different people should practice as befits them and what they need. One piece of advice that you give in the book, or one style, is, as I said before, when, as I understood it, when the concentration is really humming along, go with that. Go into the flow of the samadhi. And then when concentration is flagging, or just the mind doesn't seem to be in a position to really be able to concentrate, take that as an opportunity for insight and investigate your experience. So here.
Well, okay, go ahead. That's not what I say, but that's
okay.
fine. Good enough.
No. Correct. Please correct me. There's no sense in me asking a question about a straw man, right?
Well, I didn't say, I don't associate insight with investigate as part of it, but it's bigger than that. But okay. Go ahead. I'm splitting hairs.
No, but fair enough. So rather than investigate, when concentration is flagging, or your mind can't really settle, that's a good time to do insight type of practice, right? So here's my question. Isn't there an argument that by doing that, you might be in some sense shortchanging both concentration and insight? Because if the only time you really dive into the concentration is when the concentration is already strong and stable and deep, then you're not doing the practice of bringing the mind back and back and back and generating and training the mind in concentration when it's difficult. And then on the flip side of things, if the only time you're doing insight practice is when concentration is flagging, then you're not bringing that powerful spotlight of samadhic awareness to insight practice, and you might be doing a sort of watery weak insight practice. So there's the sort of argument. What do you think about that argument?
I appreciate what you're saying a lot. I have some comments about that, but I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, that's actually an important thing that you're bringing up. So thank you for doing that. So I would say this. First of all, we're using this terminology of when it's just a way of speaking. When I say you're kind of on the concentration side of the practice, you're on the insight side of the practice. First of all, we can naturally find ourselves in one place or the other, but we can also choose to aim ourselves in one place or the other at any time. This is getting how I would teach in more detail. When you do that, you're making some choice points about when you do that. So when you can't, when maybe I was meditating this morning and wow, it was this great meditation, and now I'm sitting here and my mind won't settle and I'm restless or falling asleep or my body hurts, or I'm just mad, or whatever's going on, or my stuff's coming up and everything. Yes, you have some choice points. So there will be some times when you may want to up the intentionality a little bit to stay with, maybe just stay with the breath and whatever you were doing. I just say breath, but whatever your practice was, to sort of coming back in that direction. So there can be times for that, for sure. We don't throw that away. But what we want to do is we want to pay attention to not only what's going on, this is the key. We pay attention to how am I relating to what's going on? And if I'm in some kind of struggle, I can't let go, it's challenging in some way, then I have to stop and turn back, because you don't want to tie yourself in a knot or be fighting yourself. Then, right, you're getting caught up in everything. That's not serving us. If anything, we're just in a struggle. So then if we can wake up in the moment and realize that that's what we're doing. So when I teach meditation, I haven't gotten into the nuts and bolts tonight on how I really teach, but one of the things I talk about a lot is a fair amount checking in to notice not only what's happening, but how am I relating to what's happening? And so there may be times when I can up the intentionality and sort of move back to the concentration emphasis, but there may be times where I just know, or I choose, I need to kind of stop doing that and just stop and like, what's going on here? And look, and then there's a million techniques that we call the insight, investigation. Sometimes it's just be present with, hang out with this knee pain or this anger or this fear, or what's it like to sit with a mind that can't concentrate. So we want to just be with. Or there's all kinds of ways we can do what we call investigation. There's a lot of how you do it is a whole big thing. Many, many ways you might do insight kind of practices. So we choose which of those flavors. Similarly, if we're on the concentration side, we just maybe stay with our breath. And it's, by the way, all these techniques like breath, those are just entry points. when we get deeper in, it all drops away and we're operating on a whole different level. But let's just say with your breath, you stay with that, you're getting all the what's happening with concentration and all the ways we teach to deepen it. One of two things is going to happen. People will find, and some of you will know this, that as your concentration strengthens, it actually doesn't pull you away from your insight side. You're more clear and aware of what's going on than ever. Because what happens is through the samadhi, it turns the mind into, well, it's two ways. You could say it turns it into a Hubble telescope, or the opposite, you could say it turns it into an electron microscope. I think both images work. It really does. And then the power to perceive and understand what's really going on, including not just the nature of reality that we sort of open a veil into, but also all of the places we work in on the insight side where we create suffering, we can't let go and become revealed. That happens on its own because we're so much clearer. And there will be times when we choose, even from there, to steer back to the insight side and then bring in all the different techniques. So everything you said, we want to bring in all those strategies, no matter which side of the practice we're on. We may steer, again, just to recap, steer back in the other direction or just let it unfold on its own. So you want to bring in, basically, we want to have a lot of tools in our toolkit. And the trick is knowing which tool to use. And that comes with experience. And then eventually you won't have to worry. If you need a saw, you're not going to pull out a screwdriver. You just won't do it anymore because you know. I don't know, is that okay with that? Good enough? Or you want to?
Yeah, I'll certainly take it.
Okay.
Yeah, no, very, very helpful. And it's helpful to be reminded again and again, there's no rubric you can use to make the decision. It's intuition, it's experience, and it's listening internally. So I appreciate that reminder. I've already gotten a private message asking, when will this be available to rewatch? So this is definitely landing with folks. People want to watch it again. So I do have some questions lined up. Let's start with Chappelle. Chappelle, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Richard, for coming through.
Hey, Chappelle.
Hey. So my question is, like, what would you say to someone who wants to attain the jhanas but doesn't have time for retreat? Like, would you say is this something you should just wait till you have time for retreat for, or do you think jhana is possible in lay life?
It's absolutely possible in lay life. I used to think, it used to be, I would say, just forget it. It only happens on retreat. Not true. I personally know a number of people. So definitely can happen in lay life. For most people, unless you're what I call a gifted concentrator, and it's a very small percentage of people, I'm not one of them, who their minds are just ripe to go and it takes almost nothing. And then they can really drop in. And there are a few of those. By the way, those people don't have it that great. They have their own challenges, which I can tell you about. It's got its own, believe me, challenges. But for most of us, we have to put the work in. So what it will come down to is daily life. You can go, no, for sure. I mean this for real. No, I don't think there's a limit on what you can do. But the question just comes down to, I don't know, sometimes it's hard in daily life, and it's hard. I don't know for you. Some people find it's easier to have a daily meditation practice. Most people find it's challenging to keep a good daily practice in daily life because it's just, there's a lot of stuff out there pulling us. Oh, it's terrible. You can be in jhana, just in these fabulous states of meditation. And then I don't do this anymore, but back, then I'd still check. Well, I got to be careful because I don't know everybody's politics. So you don't have to agree with my politics. We're all welcome here, but my politics have to be pretty liberal, but that's okay if you're not. But just an example, I'd be sitting there and I'm way past in meditation what I'd even dreamed of in the early years. And it was great. And then I'm restless because I want to see what the hell Trump did today. And I have to turn on CNN because I only checked it 2 hours ago and maybe did something crazy again, and I'm getting up from the meditation. So it can be like this, is my point. So we have to know that it can pull us in a lot of directions. So for you, you have to look and see how much your commitment and intention is given everything else in your life. And then if you put the time in, you can get the benefit for sure. And then the question is, I don't know you and what practices you do and that's a whole different thing. You don't have to go on retreat. If you can go on retreats, there's a tremendous power, and that's why I still teach retreats. In fact, just as a little aside here, if you're not done with the question, you can stay there, but because of COVID, I haven't been doing in-person retreats. I've been doing these online Zoom retreats, and there's actually one coming up. Any of you are welcome to join in the first or second week in December. I think John can tell you how to go to Metta Dharma. It'll tell you, and you can participate as little or as much as you want. You can do the whole thing, or you can just drop in and out. So you're welcome to do that if any of you are interested. And we'll be practicing in this way, kind of like I'm doing here tonight, although we get into the nuts and bolts. Anyway, I'm sorry. So that was a little sales pitch, but anyway, and it's free. You don't have to pay or anything. Anything else? Was that okay? Or do you want anything else about that?
Yeah, that was great. I guess I wanted to get more specific in the sense that, like, what do you mean by putting in the time? Like, how many hours are we talking?
I don't know.
Okay.
For you, I don't know.
For me, right.
So what I would say is, people ask that question all the time. It's so variable. So what I would say is, I don't want to put you on the spot. Well, you don't have to get into it in front of the group. I was going to ask you how much you meditate, but I realize I don't want to put you on the spot. But what I would say is, if you have the luxury, not everybody does this, find the time of day when you're clearer and less sleepy and less restless, where you feel you have to experiment. When's your best time of day for your meditation? If your mind can't concentrate, it may be just that your mind's not trained. So just because your mind's jumping all over the place, that doesn't mean it's not the best time, but you'll be able to feel it out where your energy is the best for the meditation. And then start off easy. I don't know, maybe not for you, but if someone's a brand new meditator, maybe you do. What happens if you sit there and do it with your breath for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15, build up, get to 20, get to 30, maybe you go to 45, maybe you sit more than once a day. Some people do that. Maybe they'll sit twice a day. You may not have the luxury to choose when you can sit. And you also may not have the luxury about your living situation if you have, depending on, some of us live alone, but some of us don't live in nice, that lovely person next to you, who I'm sure is very supportive. So we all have our own living situations. So we work with it the best we can. Do the best you can, when you can. When we start seeing the actual results, it can be very inspiring us to go further. When we're new, and this may not be you, it's the worst, because just when we need the support of the good feelings of the samadhi, we have it the least. And we've got to get through that beginning. It's like getting out into the depths of the ocean. You just got to get through that surf. And it can be choppy, but once you get out there, and then we're in. So do the best you can. It's enough. For real. That you can't do better than you can anyway.
Thank you.
Call me up if you want. We'll chat. It's up to you.
Absolutely.
Or maybe you have other teachers. I don't know.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you, Chappelle. Thanks, Richard. We've got 2 more people who want to ask questions. We're getting tight on time, but we can maybe take a shot at getting to both of them. If we don't, it's
Okay. I'll try to be more succinct.
I think your answers have been terrific, but let's do it. These are both veteran sit heads. So let's see. Bijan, do you want to ask your question? Get in here.
Hi, Richard. Yeah,
Hey.
Thank you. So I have a question about distractions during meditation, specifically the kinds of distractions that come up spontaneously. So when I sit down every morning, I find that naturally, just like maybe those times where you're in the shower and you just sort of remember like, oh, I have to remember to do that. Or like, oh, there's the plan that I should do that today and things like that. And knowing like standard techniques is sort of like acknowledge like the thought that came up and then like go back to the breath and things like that. The thing is I find that the thoughts are like, there's a lot of things that happen in the day. And so the spontaneous thoughts sort of continue to arise. And it seems like, though I meditate for like 30 to 45 minutes every day, a lot of the time is just spent acknowledging like all these plans or things that are coming up. And
Let me ask you a question. Can I ask you a question? And do you ever find that, say you said 30 or 45 minutes, how long, do you mind if I ask how long you've been meditating that much?
I've been meditating that much for about a year now.
Okay, so that's a good chunk of practice. So I don't need to know what you do, but do you ever find, I think I know the answer to this, but do you ever find that you have times where there's whatever daily life consciousness is for you, whatever, and then you sit to meditate, and then at some point after 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes, you definitely have the experience that you've dropped in deeper, whatever that is for you? Has that ever happened to you?
Yes.
Right. You know that's samadhi, right?
Okay, yeah. I mean, it does feel like, right, it's much more present. It's much more in the present moment, and it's much more, yes, like grounded and centered.
I mean, it's a palpable, distinct, you're not wondering, what is this magical dropping in? Like, you know the feeling of having deepened into your meditation. Maybe it's only the last 10 minutes. You know what that is, right? Yeah.
I would say, yeah.
Yeah, of course you do. I know you do. Yeah. So whatever you're doing is working, okay? Now, so however, I'm doing this quickly, we could slow it down, but we don't have time right now. I'll leave that to you. But there's a lot of things you can do between the time when you first sit to meditate and when you've dropped in after whatever, for the last 10 minutes to sit or whatever it is, on how you might work with that to help. We could say a lot of different things depending, but I'll leave that for now. There are things that can be done, but I will say whatever you're doing is working for you because you are able to get past that surf and into more of the depths. And then it's a question for you of how much time you have or how much you want to put in once you've dropped in to really, how do you work then to use that deeper time now? It doesn't mean your mind's you're not going to have distractions, but it's better, right? How you work with that then to maybe there's different ways we can like press into it a little more, deepen it a little more. And over time that will grow and grow and you'll drop into the deeper sooner and sooner with your time. Just keep doing what you're doing. Sit more if you want. You don't have to. Obviously what you're doing is working nicely. Actually, I can feel a nice presence with you. So I'll bet you're feeling some, you don't have to say some benefits in your life from your practice. I'd imagine you would say that. And so it seems pretty obvious to me. So, just one answer is whatever you're doing, just keep doing that.
Thank you. All right. I was just wondering, it's like, oh, it's very continuous. It's every single day, the distractions are always coming, they stay for a long time. And so, I mean, it sounds like it's natural and that happens.
Right.
But
so, you'll look back in another year and 5 years or whatever, and then you will find that it keeps deepening. Maybe you get to a point where 2 or 3 breaths and you're already in, and what in looks like is deeper. And then you get to a point where there's not an in and out between walking around and sitting. It's just so it's just, that's the path that it grows. So it just keeps growing in a nice way. So without knowing you, that's what I would say. Definitely whatever you're doing, just keep doing it. Whatever it is.
well, thank you. That's very encouraging. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Thanks, Bijan. Thanks, Richard. All right, we have a little time. Let's go for it. Eve, do you want to ask your question?
Thanks, John. And thank you for coming, Richard.
Yeah.
And I really like your approach where you're really person-centered so that each person can find their own way to
Right.
drawing in. And I think that's super important. And I know that I go through a lot of changes, so I have to always like try different things in different days. I'm on a precipice right now, or like a cusp, I guess, where I'm wanting to commit more to a daily practice, and I've been doing it more like a couple times a week. And I feel like it's important for me to make that shift or commitment to doing it every day. And I was wondering, just as a related question to you, how did you decide that you wanted to focus on meditation so much in your life? And yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm happy to share. It may not be useful for anybody else, but I was just drawn to it from, I don't know, it was just, I didn't sit and think about I started off the evening, like, well, what are the qualities we want to develop? And yeah, there's nothing like that. I was just drawn to it. I don't know why. It was like, I do remember, I don't know if I was terrified of death. And I thought those deep meditators, they're seeing something cracking through the veil of reality. And I desperately wanted whatever I thought that was before I died, because the idea of dying without it was too terrifying. That was part of the mix. I don't know if that was the whole motivation. I don't know. I was just always very, very drawn since I started when I was 18 years old, 17, and was drawn to certain practices. I didn't stay with them, but they were my entryways in. And it just was so obvious the right way for me. I mean, I've done other things, I've had a career and I'm an electrical engineer and done other things, but I mean, my foundation has always, for me, been my spiritual life. So it's just, I don't know, why is that, because I have two brothers and they talk to me and want to know everything. And they look at me and they go, and it's like, I might as well be a Martian, because it's just, it's like, but wait, don't you understand Dharma teachings to influence your life? And they go, okay, yeah, that's good. Okay. So, we all are wired up how we are and drawn to what we're drawn to. Why is kind of a mystery, isn't it? Why we are how we are.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's an interesting mystery. Yeah. Thank you for that.
In the old book, I don't know if it's in print, by Charlotte Joko Beck, called Everyday Zen, which I'm not really in the Zen world much, but I've read some of that stuff. I thought it was good. I don't know if she's alive anymore, but in one of her books, she says, don't come to meditation unless you're really, drawn and I forgot how she said it. Goes, maybe you need to be meditating. Maybe you need to perfect your surfing or your art or your work, you at work, or so, and you have to find if that's your truth. You need to be able to do that. And then when you're ready, you'll know it for meditation.
But I love having that quiet time. Like it feels really satisfying when I do it. Yeah.
So I just want to say one thing, because I really appreciate you putting your kind of your wish and your intention or your aspiration out there. And I feel, very just appreciative to hear you sharing that. And I just want to encourage you that, so yes, that sounds great when you say to sit every day. And since I don't know you, what I'm about to say you may already know this, but just in case, I want to say that make the intention to sit regularly. And for all the days that you don't manage to pull it off, be happy with that too, and just know you're doing the best you can, okay? I only say that because I know a lot of people, so many people, I'm not saying you, since I don't know you, but I'm sort of just preemptively trying to offer this. So many people judge themselves by how often they meditate and how concentrated they get in their meditation. And it's unfortunate, but and it doesn't help. But it's actually a deluded, incorrect way of judging ourselves if we're going to judge ourselves. And it creates a lot of suffering. It doesn't help. Anyway, so I just wanted to offer that.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Thank you for bringing that up.
Okay, well, thank you. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Thanks, Eve. Thank you, Richard. And so we are getting to the end here. So we're sort of right on time, which I'm pretty happy about. I so enjoyed this. I think lots of other folks seem to have gotten a lot out of it based on the messages that I've been receiving. Thank you, Richard. This was very helpful just for me personally, and I know for so many others. I am posting again Richard's website at his request. Richard, any final things that you want to say to the group? You do not have to, but are there any things that you'd like to say before we say goodnight? Or anything that you want to let people know about or how they can reach you?
I guess the only thing that comes up for me is that it was just hearing everyone and being with the group. It was just, I really had a lot of appreciation for everybody's sincere, good heart. And I guess I'll just end with this. It's super short. That, you know, the Buddha said this whole thing about not judging ourselves. I can tell you what the quotes and all that. But if you're going to judge yourself, please try to remember my suggestion is don't judge yourself by how good or bad you think you're doing, whatever it is. Judge yourself by your intention. And even when we screw up, we still haven't lost our good intention, and sincerity is still there. It may have gotten covered over. So the more you can reflect on and remember your good intention and keep it alive, then it will be there like a support and an ally when you need it, especially if we're being really hard on ourselves. So I guess I would offer that.
Thank you, Richard. I'm really grateful tonight for your good heart and for your generosity in sharing your time and your experience and your insights with us tonight.
Okay. Well, thank you for inviting me. This is totally cool.
Oh, and so one last thing, someone said that someone private messaged me and said to ask if you'll please join us again sometime to get into the fiddly technical stuff that we mostly skipped over tonight.
Yeah. Well, well, you have to invite me.
You're invited. I'll be, don't worry, I'll be pestering you again.
I'm happy to come. As you know, obviously we have to just work out with the schedule, of course. Yeah.
Excellent. So we'll look forward to seeing you again, Richard.
That'd be totally good.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Everyone, Richard, have a good night. Thank you. Be well.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.